Dr. Nathan Hartwell, a biologist from Earth, had never imagined that one day he would become part of something so extraordinary. He had spent most of his career researching ecosystems and human biology, trying to understand the intricate balance that had allowed humanity to thrive across countless worlds. Yet, he had never expected to be the subject of a solution to one of humanity's most pressing issues. It all started with a transmission from the Galactic Council. The Council, a governing body of various species from across the galaxy, had ruled on a drastic measure that would ensure humanity's survival. Despite humanity's technological advances, their population had started to decline rapidly on their off-world colonies. The need for human reproduction had become a critical issue, and the Council had decided to intervene in a way that Nathan had never anticipated. Humanity, being spread across different planets and struggling to maintain a stable birth rate, was facing a crisis. Without a steady increase in their numbers, many human colonies would begin to die out, leaving them vulnerable in the vast and sometimes hostile expanse of the galaxy. The Galactic Council's solution was simple, yet controversial. A select few humans would be partnered with beings from other worlds, not only to foster diplomatic relations, but also to ensure the continued survival of their species. Nathan, at first, had thought it was a joke. As a respected scientist, he had spent years researching alien species and their biology, but the idea of being part of an interspecies reproductive initiative seemed absurd. Yet, the message was clear. The Council had chosen him, among others, for this mission. He had been assigned not one, but two Petite alien partners from a peaceful and advanced planet named Illyria. Illyria was a world known for its serene landscapes, its people's intellectual prowess, and their deep connection to nature. The Illyrians, while physically small, were far from fragile. Their species had evolved with a profound ability to adapt to their surroundings, and they had a strong sense of unity. They communicated through a complex system of emotions and telepathy, understanding one another on a level that was almost impossible for humans to grasp. Nathan was chosen because of his extensive research in human biology, but also due to the rare compatibility of his genetic makeup with that of the Illyrians. The mission wasn't just about reproduction. It was about forging a bond between two species for the greater good of the galaxy. The day Nathan was introduced to Lyri and Thena, his two alien partners, was both exciting and nerve-wracking. He had been briefed on the Illyrian species, their culture, and their ways, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of meeting them in person. When he first set eyes on them, he was struck by how delicate they appeared. Lyri and Thena were much smaller than humans, barely reaching Nathan's waist. Their features were soft, their skin a subtle shade of lavender, and their eyes, large and reflective, seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. Despite their small stature, there was a quiet strength to them, an energy that made Nathan feel like he had entered a completely different world. Lyri, the elder of the two, extended her hand to greet him. The moment they touched, Nathan felt a warmth spread through him, a deep sense of connection that went beyond the physical. It was as if Lyri had shared a piece of her being with him in that single touch. She smiled, a gentle, knowing smile, and said in a soft, melodic voice, "Welcome, Nathan Hartwell. We are honored to be your partners in this journey." Thena, the younger of the two, stepped forward with a more reserved demeanor. Her eyes studied Nathan intently, as though she was trying to understand him on a deeper level. There was a curiosity in her gaze, but also a certain sadness. She had seen many humans before, but none had ever been assigned to her personally. Thena was quiet, and Nathan could sense she was observing him with a cautious but open mind. "We will learn together," she said quietly. The three of them boarded the starship that would take them to Kessis, Rye, one of the human colonies facing a critical population decline. Nathan's mind raced as he sat across from Lyri and Thena during the long journey. He had read the reports, understood the reasons for the assignment, but sitting here with his new partners, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more he needed to understand. The ship was sleek, its walls a cool metallic gray, lined with the advanced technology of the Illyrians. Lyri and Thena spoke softly among themselves, their conversation flowing in a series of delicate tones and gestures. Nathan could hear them, but he couldn't understand their words. Instead, he found himself noticing the way they moved, how fluidly they communicated, even without sound. There was a beauty in the silence between them, a silent understanding that was entirely foreign to Nathan. At one point, Leary turned to him with a curious expression. "Tell me, Nathan, what do you hope to accomplish on this mission?" she asked, her voice calm and reassuring.
Nathan hesitated for a moment before answering. "I hope to help my people."
"To ensure that we survive and thrive in the galaxy." But he paused, unsure of how to put his thoughts into words.
"I never imagined that I would be doing it this way."
"With 2 partners, I don't know what to expect, to be honest."
Leary nodded gently. "There is much to learn, and it will not be easy, but it is necessary. The future of your people depends on what we can create together."
"Not just for reproduction, but for unity. The galaxy is vast, and we must learn to live in harmony with those who share it."
Nathan sat in thought as the ship moved steadily through the stars.
He knew the journey ahead would be difficult. There would be challenges, no doubt, but he also realized that this mission wasn't just about reproducing. It was about building something greater, something that could transcend their differences and unite their species for the future of the galaxy. The days on the ship passed quickly, and Nathan began to notice the subtle ways in which Leary and Thena communicated with him. They were patient, kind, and always willing to teach.
Each day they would share stories of their planet, their people, and their history.
Nathan was fascinated by their tales of Illyria, a world that had once been ravaged by war and destruction, but had healed through the strength of unity and cooperation.
As they neared Kessis 3, Nathan felt a mixture of anticipation and fear. The colony was on the edge of collapse, its population dwindling, and the environment unstable. Yet he knew that his presence there, alongside Leary and Thena, could be the key to restoring balance. The stakes were high, and Nathan had no choice but to trust in his new partners and the mission they had been assigned to. The ship descended toward the surface of Kessis 3, the rugged terrain stretching out beneath them. Nathan could see the barren landscape, dotted with the remains of what had once been a thriving colony. He glanced at Leary and Thena, who both appeared calm, their expressions unreadable. They were ready, just as he was, for whatever lay ahead. When they landed, the colony greeted them with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The settlers were wary of the new partnership model and the idea of humans and aliens working together in such an intimate way. Nathan knew that it wouldn't be easy to convince them, but he also knew that this was the only way forward. He would have to prove that the future of humanity depended not on isolation, but on collaboration. As they stepped off the ship, Nathan felt the weight of the task ahead. He was no longer just a scientist, he was part of something much bigger. The days after landing on Kessis 3 were not as easy as Nathan had hoped. The colony was struggling, its population dwindling fast, and the settlers were not pleased with the idea of partnering with aliens to ensure humanity's future. Nathan could feel the tension in the air as he walked through the colony's desolate streets. Dust blew in the wind, and the once thriving homes now stood abandoned, with only a few hardy settlers left behind. It was clear that the people of Kessis 3 were not happy about the Galactic Council's decision to send him here, let alone with 2 alien partners. Most of the settlers were stubborn, resistant to change, and deeply distrustful of anything that wasn't human. They saw themselves as independent, self-sufficient, and didn't understand why they should trust the Illyrians, or anyone else, especially when it came to something as personal as reproduction. Nathan's heart sank as he saw the weary looks on their faces. He had hoped that this mission would be about cooperation and progress, but the reality was far from that. The settlers didn't want his help, and they certainly didn't want to accept the idea of sharing their world with beings from another planet. He could hear whispers as he walked, low voices talking about how this was just another example of the Council's interference, Some even murmured about a rebellion brewing on the horizon. He was no longer just a scientist on a mission. He was now part of something much bigger. A plan that was meant to change the future of humanity. But Nathan didn't know how he was going to convince these people that working with Leary and Thena wasn't just a necessity for human survival, but also the key to humanity's future in the galaxy. Leary and Thena, as always, remained calm and composed. Despite their small size, they held a sense of quiet strength that Nathan admired. Their graceful movements and the way they communicated with each other in their native tongue, telepathically, seemed so effortless, and yet Nathan couldn't help but feel like an outsider, unable to understand their deep connection. Still, they were there for him, always patient, always willing to help him understand their ways. Leary, being the elder of the two, took charge of their interaction with the settlers. Her calm demeanor and wise eyes helped ease some of the tension, but she didn't sugarcoat the truth.
Humanity's future is tied to ours now, she said one evening as they sat in their small living quarters in the colony's central hub.
We are the ones who can help you, Nathan.
Nathan nodded, though he felt the weight of her words. He knew it wasn't just about biology. It was about creating something that could endure, something that would bridge the gap between their species. But how could he possibly sell this idea to people who had spent years cultivating their distrust of anyone who wasn't like them? The first test came when Nathan, Leary, and Thena were invited to a community gathering by one of the colony's leaders. The settlers had reluctantly agreed to meet with them, but Nathan could feel the skepticism in their eyes as they arrived at the large meeting hall. The room was filled with humans who had lived on Kessis Phases 3 for years, and their faces were worn with exhaustion and frustration. As they entered the hall, a wave of silence swept over the room. The settlers hadn't seen many aliens up close, and they certainly weren't expecting to meet two Petite Illyrians. Leary and Thena's presence seemed to make the air heavier, as if everyone in the room was holding their breath. Nathan walked beside them, trying to make himself as unnoticeable as possible, but he couldn't help but feel the weight of their gazes. The leader of the settlement, a tall man with graying hair and a scar across his face, stood at the front of the room and motioned for everyone to settle down.
Well, looks like we have the aliens with us today, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Let's hear what they have to say then.
Maybe they'll convince us that this whole partnership thing isn't just another way for the council to take control. Nathan stepped forward, trying to ease the tension. He knew he had to speak first. He was, after all, the one who had been assigned to this mission. I understand your concerns, he said, his voice steady but unsure. But I want you to know that this isn't about control. This is about survival. We're here because humanity's population is dwindling, and we need to work together to ensure our future. It's not just for the council, it's for us, for all of us. Leary stepped forward, her soft presence almost glowing in the dim light of the room. She spoke in the melodic language of the Illyrians, and although Nathan couldn't understand her words, the emotion in her voice was clear. Her message was one of hope, of unity, of a future that was not bound by isolation, but by collaboration. It wasn't just about reproduction. It was about finding a way to survive, together. Thena, who had been standing silently beside Leary, finally spoke.
We are not here to take over,
she said, her voice soft but firm. We are here because your survival matters to us. We share a common goal, to build a future for all of us, one where our species can coexist in peace. But the settlers weren't convinced. The leader, a man named Garrett, crossed his arms and shook his head.
You expect us to just accept this? He asked, his voice bitter. You think that just because we're all in trouble, we should start trusting aliens?
You don't know what it's like to live here, to fight every day just to stay alive. Nathan could feel the tension rising in the room, and he realized that they weren't ready to hear the truth. Not yet. The pain of survival had made them bitter, and the idea of working with outsiders was something they couldn't even begin to comprehend. They needed more time, more understanding. The meeting ended in silence, with no resolution.
As they left the hall, Nathan felt the weight of the settlers' distrust pressing down on him.
He couldn't help but wonder if he would ever be able to change their minds. But Leary and Thena were there, offering silent support. They understood, in their own way, what he was feeling. Over the next few days, Nathan continued to work alongside Leary and Thena, but the settlers remained distant. There were a few small breakthroughs. An old woman who had lost her family approached Leary and asked for guidance on growing crops in the harsh soil of Kessis. 3. Another settler, a young man named Tariq, began to show interest in Thena's techniques for preserving water. But the majority of the settlers remained wary, their fear of change stronger than their desire for help. As Nathan walked through the colony with Leary and Thena one evening, he found himself questioning everything. How could he possibly convince these people that this partnership was the answer? How could he make them see that Leary and Thena were not the enemy, but allies? Leary sensed his unease and placed a hand on his shoulder.
"The road ahead will be long, Nathan," she said quietly. "But it is not impossible.
We will show them, one by one, that what we offer is not only for survival, but for something greater, a future where humanity can thrive."
Nathan nodded, feeling a spark of hope ignite within him.
Maybe it wasn't about changing everyone's mind all at once. Maybe it was about taking small steps, one connection at a time. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was necessary. And together, Nathan, Leary, and Thena would prove that their partnership was not just the future of humanity, it was the future of the galaxy. The situation on Kessis 3 was growing more tense with every passing day. Despite the best efforts of Nathan, Leary, and Thena to integrate into the colony, the settlers remained resistant. There were moments of progress, small victories that gave them hope, but for every step forward, there seemed to be 2 steps back. Nathan knew that the challenges of this mission weren't just about reproduction, as he had once thought. They were about changing hearts and minds, about convincing people who had lost so much that cooperation was the key to survival. The rebellious whispers among the settlers grew louder. Nathan could feel the pressure mounting on him, and each conversation he had with Leary and Thena seemed to only increase his own sense of helplessness. How could he convince these people to trust him, to trust the Illyrians, when they had lived in isolation for so long? But things took an unexpected turn when a group of settlers approached him with a different kind of request. It wasn't about their concerns regarding alien partnerships or distrust of the Galactic Council. It was something much more immediate. The settlers had discovered a dangerous new problem, an underground water supply that had been contaminated, and they needed help fixing it before their entire colony ran out of clean water. It was a problem Nathan knew he could address, but only if he had the right resources. He immediately began formulating a plan with Leary and Thena, hoping that their knowledge of advanced technologies and natural resource management could offer a solution. As they huddled in a makeshift lab, Nathan was surprised by how seamlessly Leary and Thena worked together. Their bond was undeniable, and their efficiency in problem-solving was something Nathan had never witnessed before. Thena, who had previously been quiet and distant, was the one who took the lead on the technical aspects of the operation. She used her telepathic abilities to communicate directly with the equipment, adjusting its settings with a speed and precision that left Nathan in awe. Leary, on the other hand, focused on the more delicate ecological aspects of the problem, using her deep understanding of natural systems to ensure that their solution would not only fix the water supply, but also keep the surrounding environment safe. As they worked, Nathan found himself growing more comfortable with his role in this partnership. He was no longer just a researcher or a reluctant participant in a mission he didn't fully understand. He was becoming part of something bigger. He wasn't just a human scientist anymore. He was a collaborator, a teammate in a joint effort that could potentially change the course of human history. But even as they made progress on the water issue, the tension in the colony continued to grow. Some of the settlers had begun to openly protest, demanding that the council remove the alien partnerships and allow them to deal with their problems on their own. Nathan knew that this kind of rebellion couldn't be ignored. It was a direct challenge to the future of their mission. One day, as Nathan was walking with Leary and Thena through the colony, he overheard a heated conversation between a group of settlers. They were talking about a plan to sabotage the efforts of the council, and from what Nathan could hear, their target was the water supply. They had no idea that the very thing they were trying to destroy was the key to their survival. Nathan's heart raced as he realized the danger they were facing. If the settlers succeeded in sabotaging the water system, the entire colony would be at risk. He knew he had to act quickly, but he couldn't do it alone. The trust of the settlers was still fragile, but he needed their help. He needed them to see that their actions would only harm their own future. He turned to Leary and Thena. "We need to stop them," he said urgently. "If we don't, the whole colony could be in danger. We can't let fear and anger cloud their judgment."
Leary's calm voice cut through the tension. "We will handle this together," she said.
"But we must do so carefully. These settlers are afraid. They don't understand why we're here, and their fear makes them act in ways that aren't rational. We will show them that there is another way." Thena nodded in agreement, her eyes determined. "We must help them see reason before it's too late." Nathan wasn't sure how they were going to convince the settlers, but they had no choice but to try. As they approached the group of rebels, Nathan's mind raced. He could feel his pulse quickening. This was it. This was the moment when everything would either fall apart or begin to come together. Leary stepped forward, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the group.
"Stop," she said, her voice steady but full of authority. "You do not know what you are doing." The rebels froze, their eyes shifting between Leary, Thena, and Nathan. There was a moment of silence before one of the rebels, a tall woman named Selene, spoke.
"We know exactly what we're doing," she spat. "We're saving our people from more alien interference."
We don't need your help, and we certainly don't need to rely on you for our survival. Nathan felt the heat rise in his chest.
He could understand her anger. He could see how the settlers felt betrayed by the council's decision. But what they didn't understand was that without help, without cooperation, they would not survive on their own.
"You're wrong," Nathan said, stepping forward. "Without the help we're offering, without Leary and Thena's expertise, this colony won't make it."
"We're not here to take over or to control you. We're here to help you, to help us all survive." Selene's face softened just slightly, but the anger was still there. "How can we trust you?" she asked. "How can we trust them?" She gestured toward Leary and Thena, who stood calmly, unfazed by the hostility around them. "We're not asking for blind trust," Leary said, her voice calm yet powerful.
"We are here because we care about your future. We are here because we believe in collaboration, in unity."
"It's the only way we will all survive. This isn't about you or us. It's about the future of all of us." Thena stepped forward, her presence quieter but just as firm. "The water supply is not just a human issue.
"It's a life issue for all of us. The earth and the environment are delicate."
If you destroy this, it will be too late to fix it. We are offering a solution that works for everyone. But it requires trust, and it requires understanding." There was a long pause, and Nathan watched as Selene's hard expression slowly began to soften. He could see the hesitation in her eyes, the internal struggle she was facing. It was a battle between fear and reason, between survival and pride. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter now. "We'll help you," she said, almost reluctantly. "But this is the last chance. If we fail, we won't get another." Nathan felt a wave of relief wash over him. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was progress. Slowly, the group of rebels began to stand down, their faces less angry, less afraid. They agreed to help Nathan, Leary, and Thena complete the repairs to the water system, and they promised to stop their sabotage efforts. Over the next few days, the work was hard, and the atmosphere remained tense. But progress was made. Nathan couldn't help but marvel at the way Leary and Thena worked, their partnership not just efficient, but beautifully synchronized. They shared a bond that Nathan was only beginning to understand, a bond that went beyond words, beyond biology. And as they completed the repairs, Nathan realized that this mission was about more than just survival. It was about finding common ground, even in the most unlikely of places. It was about proving that despite their differences, they could work together for something greater than themselves. The colony had taken a small step toward unity, but Nathan knew that the journey was far from over. There were still many obstacles ahead, but with Leary and Thena by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The days following the repair of the water system on Kessis 3 were marked by a cautious calm. While the immediate threat had been averted, Nathan, Leary, and Thena knew that their work was far from finished. The trust of the settlers, though momentarily won, remained fragile. The tension between them and the alien partners was still very much alive in the hearts and minds of the people. But Nathan could feel that something had shifted, a tiny spark of hope that had been kindled among the settlers, even if they didn't fully realize it yet. Nathan had always considered himself a scientist, a man of logic, facts, and reason, but these last few weeks had shown him the power of something far more elusive: connection. The bond between himself, Leary, and Thena wasn't just about biology or diplomacy. It was about something deeper, an understanding that went beyond words, beyond any preconceived notions of what could be. As the sun set over the horizon of Kessis 3, the colony looked more hopeful than it had in weeks. The once dry earth was now alive with new shoots of greenery. The water supply had been restored, and the settlers were starting to see the fruits of their labor. Yet, there was still much work to be done. The colony had been saved from immediate disaster, but without long-term cooperation, it could all unravel again. Nathan found himself standing at the edge of the colony, looking out at the wide, empty landscape. Beside him, Leary and Thena stood quietly. There was a calm in the air, a peace that seemed to settle around them. Leary's voice broke the silence. "You're wondering what happens next."
Nathan turned to her, surprised by the depth of her understanding.
"Yes," he said softly. "I'm not sure how to keep this going."
The settlers are starting to come around, but there's still so much fear, so much resistance. I don't know if they'll ever fully trust us. Leary's eyes were steady as she looked at him. Trust takes time. It's not something that can be given all at once.
But you've started something here. You've shown them that it's possible.
They may take time, but eventually they will come to see what you have already seen. That cooperation, unity, is the only way forward. Thena, who had been quietly observing the two, spoke up, her voice soft but resolute.
"The settlers need to see the results. They need to feel the benefits of working together, side by side."
It's not just about survival. It's about building something better, something that can last.
Nathan nodded, understanding the truth in their words. But there was still a nagging worry in the back of his mind.
What if the settlers rejected this new way of life? What if fear and distrust won in the end? As if reading his thoughts, Leary placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Do not worry about what you cannot control.
All you can do is offer them the choice. The rest is up to them."
Over the next few days, Nathan and his partners focused on continuing the work they had started. The water system had been restored, but there were still other issues that needed attention: agriculture, resource management, and of course the emotional health of the settlers. They weren't just physically hungry. They were emotionally and spiritually exhausted from years of struggling on their own. Nathan worked closely with Leary and Thena to help the settlers. He spent hours with them, teaching them new ways to manage their resources, improving crop yields and introducing more sustainable farming techniques. The settlers began to see small improvements, And with those improvements came a small shift in their attitudes. They were starting to trust, if only a little. They were starting to understand that they weren't alone anymore. One evening, as Nathan was walking back from a day of work with the settlers, he was stopped by Celine, the woman who had once led the resistance against the alien partnerships. She stood near the entrance to one of the colony's storage buildings, her arms crossed in front of her, a serious expression on her face. For a moment, Nathan thought she might be ready to start another argument. But when she spoke, her voice was different, calm, almost respectful.
"I wanted to thank you," she said, her gaze steady, "for everything. I was wrong to resist. I see now that we need your help. And the help of your partners." She glanced toward Leary and Thena, who were standing nearby. "I've seen the difference in the crops, in the water. We would have never managed this without you." Nathan was taken aback. He had never expected Celine to apologize or admit she was wrong, but her words were genuine, and he could see that her pride had been replaced by a recognition of the necessity of what they were doing. "You're welcome," Nathan said, offering a small smile. "We're all in this together."
"But we still have a lot to do. There's much more work ahead of us." Celine nodded. "I know, but we're willing to help now. You're not alone. And neither are we." It was a small step, but to Nathan, it felt like a giant leap. For the first time since arriving on Kessis, 3, he began to believe that their mission could succeed. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but there was a chance now, a real chance, that they could build something lasting. The weeks that followed were filled with hard work, but also with moments of triumph. Slowly, the settlers began to come together. The rifts between the humans and the Illyrians began to heal, as they realized that their differences didn't have to divide them. There were still obstacles to overcome, further resistance from some, lingering fear in others, but the overall atmosphere had shifted. The people of Kessis, 3 were beginning to accept the idea that unity, not isolation, was their key to survival. It wasn't just the water or the crops that improved, it was the community itself. The settlers started to share their skills, to teach each other. They were no longer just surviving, they were building. They were learning that their future was not just about ensuring that humanity would continue to exist, but about creating a future where both humans and aliens could thrive together. And in the midst of it all, Nathan found himself growing closer to Leary and Thena. At first, their partnership had been a necessity, a requirement for the survival of humanity. But now, as the days passed and they worked together, he began to see them not just as partners, but as friends. They had shared so much, more than Nathan had ever expected. Their bond was deeper than any he had ever experienced. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset over Kessis, 3, Nathan spoke quietly. "Do you ever wonder what will happen next?" he asked. "What will happen when this mission is over?" Leary's gaze was soft as she looked at him. "We don't know what the future holds, Nathan, but we do know that we have done what we set out to do. We have helped others see what can be achieved when we work together. That is the foundation of the future. The rest will come in time." Thena nodded, her expression thoughtful.
We've built something here, Nathan. Something strong.
"And no matter where we go, we will carry this with us." Nathan felt a sense of peace settle over him. He knew there would be challenges ahead, that the future was uncertain, but in that moment, he understood what Leary and Thena meant. They had already built something invaluable, a future where humanity and aliens could live side by side, not just surviving, but thriving. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky above them, Nathan realized that the journey wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about creating something that would last, something that would shape the future for generations to come. And as he looked at Leary and Thena, he knew that this was just the beginning. Together, they had started a new chapter in the history of the galaxy, one that would be written not in fear and division, but in unity and hope.